At Wyn Jones, we believe in innovation. Innovation refines, improves, and revolutionizes. We believe in recognizing innovation and those who innovate. Innovation drives us, even if we are unaware of it. We believe that innovation should be rewarded. At Wyn Jones, we have more than 50 years' experience in helping businesses achieve their goals. From concept to commercialization, we are right there with you. We help our clients harness their ideas and harvest their inventions, providing strategic insights into competitor activity and, most importantly, protecting their assets. We know that your intellectual property is your crown jewels. Wales is a hotbed of technology and innovation. The COVID-19 pandemic has thrown medicine and healthcare into the spotlight of the global stage. Personalized medicine and predictive healthcare technology is one of the fastest growing modern industries, and Wales pioneers here. Demand on healthcare resources continues to rise. However, the tools are becoming ever more advanced, leading to better results and better efficiency. Patient care is being driven forward by data-led initiatives, digital technology, advanced pharmaceuticals and medical inventions, and their role is only set to increase. We are also living the cyber revolution, and Wales sits at the forefront of technology, hyperconnectivity, and artificial intelligence in this cyber era. The landscape is rapidly evolving, and we are proud that Wales are navigating these challenges and innovating in ways never seen before by our global predecessors. Here at Wyn Jones, we're proud to be dedicated to helping you push those boundaries. We need to keep on innovating, but innovation needs to be sustainable. Sustainability protects our ecosystems, human and ecological health and natural resources. And we know that intellectual property and sustainability don't always sit neatly together. Sustainability is critical for the health of our planet, our people, and our economies, and innovating has never been more challenging. But it's a challenge that Wales and Wyn Jones IP are happy to meet. We are delighted again to support Wales Tech Week, and this year sponsor the Smart Stage. The festival was a huge success last year and provides information and resources for those across a range of different technologies and sectors. The week showcases technology in Wales at its best, and we are proud to support it. Join us this week at our events and during panel sessions. Please also drop by our virtual expo booth and feel free to get in touch. Thank you.
Welcome to Wales Tech Week 2021. Thank you to our partners. Enjoy the session.
Hello and welcome to Wales Tech Week's panel on smart insurance. Firstly, thanks for joining us. My name's Steve Dukes. I'm COO at Confused.com, and I'll play referee for our panel today. So let's meet them now. We have Nigel Lombard, who's CEO of Peppercorn AI Group. We have Mohammed Khan, who's General Insurance Leader at PwC. And we'll shortly have Gareth Rees, who leads on Automotive and Mobility Solutions at SwissRe. So thank you all for joining us. So folks, the topic today is smart insurance. And last year in particular accelerated the need for technology, changing the way consumers shop, forcing businesses to improve the way they operate quickly. But smart insurance, I believe, it arguably goes way beyond digitization and started long before the world changed so dramatically in March last year. So what is smart insurance? How smart is it really? and importantly, how do we see the future unfolding? So let's look to our panel to start with a definition. And let's start with Nigel. Nigel, what does smart insurance mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. In short, it almost means anything and everything in my book. It's really about the application of technology and data, and it's a bit like the term insurtech in a way. So actually, I'm not too concerned about a rigid definition. And in fact, I think it could be constraining. However, just to pad out what I think it does include, I would certainly include the use of devices, IoT, the Internet of Things for risk monitoring and mitigation. So by way of a few examples, certainly in the world of auto insurance, that's monitoring devices, dash cams, be they after fit or embedded in vehicles, even the application of data derived from driving aids in property. That could be devices like leak detection, motion detection, those kind of things. In health, monitoring of sort of health elements like heart, the pulse, breathing, weight, those kind of things. So they would certainly be included. I'd also include new distribution methods and new products. So by that, I mean on-demand insurance, the recently more touted embedded insurance, even multi-product combined insurances. So new product design and distribution within there. And finally, I would certainly also include anything around the application of data and improvements in customer convenience. So that could mean the application of data and the analysis of data to reduce fraud, to improve data entry and customer convenience, even the application of technology to allow the data transportation of risk information. But certainly improving the customer journey, which is very close to my heart at Peppercorn. So yeah, pretty broad. That would be my view.
Great, Mohammed, your thoughts?
I think Nigel's covered all of it actually, but I mean, I'd probably summarise it in a slightly different way. For me, smart insurance is where it's genuinely two-way. So I think if you look at insurance historically, it actually hasn't really changed that much since the first fire contract was written all that time ago. I think it was over 150 years ago. It might even be longer actually. It was basically a contract that covers you for something, and when the fire happened, you then made a phone call, or back in the day, you sent a runner to the insurance company, and then that they would send someone over, assess it, and then make a repair. I think that the lovely thing, and Nigel has covered it, the lovely thing about these devices, I think, is that we can genuinely make it two-way, and in my view, get back to where insurance, the roots of insurance, and the roots of insurance weren't about providing capital if an event occurred. They were genuinely about pooling risk and trying to mitigate the risk, i.e. prevent the risk from occurring or the claim from occurring. And then if it does, then we'll provide some capital behind it as well. So for me, smart insurance in a nutshell is two-way. Anything that enables us to get two-way, I think, is brilliant. And we're starting to see that. So commercial lines, for example, if you think about cargo, there are some what they call I've forgotten the name, but I'll call it a smart box, where literally if a container ship's going across the sea, and let's say it meets an accident and the cargo drops off the side, instantly that it's dropped off the side. But more interestingly as well, you'll know whether water's leaked into it or not, and therefore whether the contents have been damaged. That for me would be an example of smart insurance. So it's instantly working.
Great. Now, you mentioned that that in some ways insurance hasn't changed over a long period of time since its origin story, if you like. But we'll keep it positive for a moment. So let's think about the best innovations in the insurance industry. Let's pick the last decade. So Mohammed, your view on what's been the biggest, most impactful innovation in insurance in the last decade?
So I'm going to be boring, and I think it is, like I said, I don't think much has changed over the last 150, 200, 300 years in insurance. But I think in the last 5 to 10 years, it really has. So I think, Nigel, you and I are mature enough to remember when the red telephone came. And for many of your viewers, they're not going to know what I'm talking about now. And we had, can I name it, Steve? We had Direct Line. And I think they did revolutionise the personalised insurance industry, because suddenly you could pick up the phone and talk directly to your insurer, not just when you had a claim. And so for me, the biggest innovation, I'm classify it as a big thing, is insurers realizing that the customer, being close to the customer, is really, really important. And Steve, and by the way, Steve hasn't paid me to say what I'm going to say next. I think when Confused.com came along, I think again that was another step change, because it was about trying to meet the needs of the customer rather than saying, oh, well, rather than basically saying, look, you need insurance, so here it is. Whereas with things like DLG and things like Confused.com, it was accelerating the point of, look, what do you, the customer, want? And we will give you something that will help provide and try and meet your needs. That would be the biggest innovation for me.
Thanks. Nigel, your thoughts?
Yeah. So I must be, I'm sure I'm slightly older than that, so I certainly understand the red telephone reference, and it was transformational, as indeed was the use of online forms. So I agree in terms of true transformations. Have there really been that many? Now, Steve, I know you want a bit of optimism here. Look, there absolutely have been some fantastic improvements and changes and innovations. Whether they've been truly transformational, that's probably a different question, and maybe we'll come back to that. So to try and more directly answer your question, and I'm almost insulting myself in some ways, I guess, because I've sort of been involved in 2 startups and now involved in my 3rd, so almost suggests a bit of a failing on my part. I am encouraged, massively encouraged by the amount of innovation that's going on out there. I'm going to name one in a minute that particularly springs to mind that I think is pretty impressive. So, and I think there is a danger of overhype a little bit in some cases, which can sort of leave a shadow across the whole industry. And some are very niche, and some startups have gone out of business. Nonetheless, I'm not going to name loads and loads and loads for a second. There's one that probably stands out on a couple of levels for me, and that's because it's slightly bigger than niche. There are many positives to it, and that's actually an outfit called Zego. I'm sure almost all of you have heard of Zego, and what I like about them is, and they're just an example of a really good startup innovation in SureTech. They've identified an underserved growing market in the gig economy drivers. So fantastic spot, a growing customer base, something that reflects the changing economy and in the world in which we live. And they've also, on top of that, they've created a fair way of charging. So I've got a lot of time and respect for that. And they've made it easy to access, i.e. they've made it digital from the get-go. And most importantly, what they've actually done is managed to successfully bring it to market. And that's the really, really hard part, bringing it to market. So I think, there are a number of innovations out there, none quite as transformational as I think we can be to the point of Direct Line and people like Confused.com, etc. But nonetheless, some great and impressive things out there.
You've both touched on a couple of overlapping topics there, which I think are important. You talked about businesses dialing into what customers are really looking for and what their needs are. And I think, Nigel, you mentioned the concept of underserved markets, underserved groups of people. So staying with those two for a minute, if we focus on customer pain points, what do you think are the biggest customer pain points that technology or smart insurance can help us address? Let's start with you, Mohammed.
Yeah, look, I actually think it's quite easy and difficult at the same time. So for me, the biggest pain point is that what customers think they're buying isn't necessarily the case when they come to make a claim. And so I'll make that really, really clear. I buy a home insurance policy. Let's hope the rain over the next few days doesn't transform into a storm. I get some storm damage. The assessor comes around and goes, yeah, but that's due to wear and tear. Now, as a customer, that would infuriate me, because I've paid for my home insurance. I think I'm covered. If the insurance company had said to me, look, we'll tell you what's wear and tear at the beginning of the policy, fix it, and this is a premium, then at least I know. And it's that information asymmetry that I think is a really big pain point in personal lines insurance in particular. And Steve, to your exact point, it's something that actually, interestingly, I think can be fixed with technology. Because why couldn't we, to Nigel's earlier Zego point, why can't we use this to say, walk around my house, take some photos, use Google Maps, use drone technology to take photos of one's house using my earlier example and get that disconnect. And I still think in insurance, there's too big a disconnect between what I would phrase as the terms and conditions on the underwriting side versus the terms and conditions on the claims side. And if we could solve that, I think it would make insurance much smoother. Because after all, insurance is one of those really weird things, isn't it? You really need it when you're almost at your lowest ebb. Because when you're making a claim, no one's feeling good about themselves at that exact moment in time.
Yeah, and often that's one of the best opportunities to create a really powerful customer experience rather than trying to avoid a bad one. And if you think about loyalty to brands and companies and reuse of them, then I think that's, as you say, that is an opportunity there to make a real difference. Nigel, would you agree with that? What would you add?
Yeah, I've not met Mohammed before, but we are remarkably on the same page. We'll certainly find some areas where we're not, I'm sure, as we progress through this. But yeah, I'm on the same page. I think I'd just add a few elements. First of all, we've got to remember that nobody likes insurance. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants to pay for it. It's just a necessary evil, and nobody expects to, on the whole, nobody expects to claim either. So we're already. The whole of insurance is a massive pain point. So let's get the context right first of all. Nobody wants it, but in many cases it's a legal obligation, or you just absolutely have to have something. So I think that the pain points, in a nutshell, repeating one or two elements that Mohammed's already said, but I think the time it takes, I'd certainly add that, to research, to understand and arrange insurance is a complete pain. Nobody wants to have to do it. So critically, we can address that, and I'll come to that in a minute. Customer understanding, Mohammed's already adequately covered that, so that's certainly an area. And also, some of the needless processes that are involved that insurers demand of consumers, particularly in personal lines, be that post-sale underwriting checks where some data's not been looked up, or there's an extra bit of information. Please, can you post me, fax me or whatever, not fax, but email me your no claims discount proof, or craziness like that. It's just inconvenient things like that. And on occasion, it can be a very slow claims process where customers just don't know what's happening. So those are certainly major pain points, but probably the biggest one of all that most consumers would cite is the cost, is the pain. And that's about understanding the value sometimes as well. So to the second part of your question, Steve, around how can tech help with these things, I think the latest technology, and this is certainly an area where what I'm doing with Peppercorn is absolutely aiming to tackle these things, is if you can bring personalization into this, so therefore that helps understanding, so consumers can actually be in charge of understanding what it is they're actually buying to make sure they really get it, rather than a sort of one-size-fits-all kind of form where you don't really get that opportunity and something's buried in the policy wording. If you have the opportunity to interrogate and understand in a meaningful and accessible manner, technology can certainly help do that. And that's what a level of personalization and customer-first design can do. Simple things like the more that we can apply technology to help look at data with a customer's permission, to reduce the amount of data entry to understand the risk, that just makes it far more convenient for a customer. Remembering nobody wants to take the time to do this. And also a good measure of, from a consumer's point of view in terms of value, is if you look at the internal processes of an insurance provider's business, if you ask yourself the question, would a customer pay, if they could see what you're actually doing, would they pay you to do that? And actually there's a large amount of premium effectively created, additional premium created by the costs that insurance companies incur. And that can be reduced by the use of robotic process automation, RPA. So certainly things like that. So rather than, which is a slightly roundabout way of technology can help insurance providers be much more efficient and therefore take that value and add it back to the customer and therefore reduce the cost. So there are many ways that technology can help us. And yeah, there's certainly some areas around self-service, digital channels. And I'm not on a crusade here, but I'd almost like to see the end of call centers in the insurance business, or their refined use to only where it's necessary, rather than almost the default use. That's what we'll hopefully come to, the abolishment of call centers, the absence, removing the need for them.
Okay, well, and welcome, Gareth. Thanks for joining. Hi.
Apologies.
No problem. So you're just in time. So we've just covered a number of ways that technology and smart insurance can help customers address customer pain points. I wonder though, is it always the way? So Mohammed, perhaps we can come to you. Where we've talked about where smart insurance is providing a solution to customer problems or industry problems, but other examples of technology simply being used for technology's sake?
I don't think so at the moment. I mean, I'd be interested in Nigel's view on this. I actually think in insurance we're not using enough technology. I suspect Nigel might agree with me on that one. I think when a long time ago, when the internet first came about, I think there was an element of that where everyone had a website, but you couldn't really do anything on it. So almost like, what was the point of it? But I think now, if I think about technology in insurance in particular, I think mostly people are trying to innovate to do what Nigel was talking about earlier, which is, how do we make the customer experience? Maybe that's a running theme. We've both talked about it through the questions you've asked. How do we make the customer experience easier, more personal, and smoother? If I can be frank, I do think what may happen in the next couple of years is that people will try different technology. So to Nigel's point, I wish we could get rid of call centers. But if I think about my mum, she definitely always wants to talk to someone. But Nigel, to your point, does it have to be at a call center, or could it just be a video chat through this? And does the person need to be in a big call center, or could they be working from home, which many of us are? No, absolutely right. So I think that the important bit for me though will be how people try things and see what works and what doesn't work. I think especially in personal lines insurance, and for those of you who are watching this who work in personal lines insurance, you're all aware the profit margins are so tight. No one is going to be using a technology that they don't really need, because basically that'll be a needless expense.
Okay, Gareth, you've had very close exposure to a number of different technologies, and I think of you as someone with a very strong radar for what can really help customers and businesses, and perhaps what can't. So what's your view on this topic?
So I think from a tech perspective and how it needs to help with customers, there's two things it can do. It can either make a complicated process simpler or a bland experience richer. So when I think of the motor insurance as an example, there are complicated processes around claims. The very need to call a call center, likely sit on hold for a period of time, then explain everything and try and get someone to interpret what you mean. Well, all of that can be done from a smartphone. And with technology developments, for example, around visual intelligence these days, it does exist now in a way such that you can take images of your vehicle and that image be interpreted, processed to a point where you can work out whether is the car repairable or not, and if so, you route the customer down the right track depending on that. That can all be done from a smartphone. So that's an example of something, or technology making a complicated process simpler. And then elsewhere, then in motor insurance, I would see telematics as an opportunity to make a bland experience richer, in the sense that traditionally car insurance is, you come along once every 12 months, you buy a policy and you hope to never speak to your insurer ever again, because if you do, it's because you've had a crash or you need to change something. But what telematics, and most importantly, what the sort of modern evolution of smartphone-enabled telematics is getting instant feedback on your sort of driving, and also features such as rewards. So being able to see a correlation between you investing the time as a consumer in engaging with your insurer, but having a reason to do so and an incentive to do so. And rewards are a great example of that. And it benefits on both sides of the coin, because to get rewards, what you're doing is driving better, driving more safely. So you're less likely to have an accident, hopefully. And that in turn benefits the insurer from a claim spend perspective. So in that sense, everyone's a winner. But it's taking that kind of traditional grudge purchase view around motor insurance and turning it into a far richer experience for the consumer.
Thank you. I think it's interesting. A lot of, as I think Mohammed said, a lot of these questions have come back to where's there the opportunity to make the customer experience better, even if that means efficiency in the provider, which can then be passed on to the customer through sharper pricing or investment in other things. But what haven't we talked about? How else can tech adoption and smart insurance more broadly help user experience and help customer centricity? Perhaps let's start with Nigel.
Specifically around user experience, customer centricity, I think just building on an earlier point, circa 40 years ago, there was a transformational moment when things moved to the telephone from the office, and then circa 20 years ago, things went online. There were online forms, the likes of Confused.com, Admiral. There are other brands available, of course, as well. So those are key points of, I think, transformational user experience and, in a way, customer centricity to an extent. My thinking is the next step is really probably, in fact, I believe this rather than probably, is going to be digital conversational AI. I see that being the next major transformational part of insurance, because I think that can answer a number of sort of challenges and pain points, if you will. That's certainly something that with my current startup, Peppercorn, that's something that we are tackling head on. So if we just think about the last 18 months, digital take-up, not just in the UK, around the world, has been accelerating over the last 10 years plus. But in the last 18 months in particular, that's been accelerated even more. So what we've seen happen, and there's loads of studies out there about this, is consumer adoption of digital channels, be that WhatsApp or Messenger, Alexa. And sorry if I say that and it all goes off in people's homes. Alexa. That has that the adoption of that is across the whole age range. So it's not just millennials, or there is that view is long gone now. So this is across the whole age range. So therefore, that actually presents an opportunity, and without pushing Peppercorn too much, but this is where we're aiming, because this is what I believe to answer this question. Offering customers the digital channel of choice that they want to use is an expectation these days, and that applies to insurance. It applies to almost all industries in practice, but certainly insurance, which is really just a promise. It's not even a bit of paper these days. It's just an electronic promise. And it's nothing. You pay for something and you get nothing until you have an accident, or you need to claim in some shape or form. So actually having the access and the customer experience is central. So having 24/7 automated, so therefore you're only paying for a level of automation which you receive by way of benefit through a lower premium, through your channel of choice, creates convenience if implemented in the right way, personalization. And personalization means not just saying my name, but also only asking the questions that are needed in my situation at that particular point in time in a way that's suitable to me. So those things are absolutely possible, and technology and the adoption of these channels can absolutely enable that. And ultimately, just to repeat, by applying technology, we can apply massive levels of automation. We can really reduce the cost as well as improve the experience. By reducing the cost, we can reduce the premium, which is also part of the experience as well, a huge part of the experience. and therefore the customers can really, really win. So improved customer experience, better customer value, technology these days through the likes of AI, through RPA, combined with consumers really adopting and want to be in charge on a self-service basis of their own insurance rather than sitting waiting for a human to speak to on the end of a call center. That's the way to go. In the main, I do not rule out the need still to have humans involved in a business, so don't get me wrong. So that's my answer. Sorry if that was too long, Steve. I was on one there.
No, not at all. I'm going to go to Mohammed next because we've heard the view of the startup at the bleeding edge of technology. But Mohammed, you speak to the industry titans. You know what keeps them up at night and what they're focused on. So, yeah, tell us, is that how they see it? Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, Nigel referred to something just there, and I think it's really important. You know, the last 18 months, I think, have caused many people to reset. And what I mean by that is, you know, many of us have been lucky enough to have been able to work from home. And therefore, it's caused us all. And we've actually done, as in PwC, done some surveys about, you know, what people are going to do before versus after COVID. And what's really interesting is, you know, people have really thought about, well, what is it that I need? So, you know, we had a discussion before, Steve, you know, between you, me and Nigel about insurance hasn't really changed over the last 100 years. So if I take the simple motor product, what really annoyed me about motor insurance before is, for me personally, I only drove at the weekends, yet I couldn't find an insurance product that met my needs. My mum, as an example, drives, you know, only 2,000 miles a year, but you know, where's the product that meets that kind of need? I.e., basically going to the shops and coming back and doing the weekly shop. So I think what you'll find is that technology, for example, with usage-based insurance. And Gareth, you mentioned telematics, but almost going a step further, you know, you've got companies like Buy Miles who will rate you on the number of miles that you drive. I think they will be important. I think if you think about commercial lines as well, and we talked a bit about this before, there is still a massive disconnect between what companies need in terms of risk management and what insurance provides. So if I can bring that to life, if I'm a small business owner and I have a cyber attack, let's say I'm a florist, yes, I get the payment, but actually what I really want is my shop to be back online and to be working again within 1 or 2 days. Because if I'm off for 4 to 6 weeks, customers may go to another florist and then I don't get them back again. So I think where technology can really help improve the customer experiences in 2 ways. One, the points that Nigel has covered, and two, actually the point I was making before about thinking about holistically, what is it that our customer needs from a risk management perspective, helping them avoid the claim in the first place using technology. Gareth raised a point, if you're driving, you know, you can get real-time feedback through these devices on how you're driving. Wouldn't it be great if it also gave you feedback on how you improve your driving? So when you did this, that was really good. That makes you a safer driver. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? And then we'd all become safer drivers. Then less people would need to go to confused.com. No, I mean, I'm joking with that. But you know, maybe our premiums would become cheaper. You know, if we use technology to mitigate the risk, to stop us making the claim in the first place, for me, that's where technology can drive us. And in my view, is where the insurance industry needs to move.
Great, thank you. Gareth, over to you. Now we're just going to bring you off mute.
Sorry. The point that I was going to raise around technology, it's also the insurer's understanding of what technology can achieve in the risk asset itself. So, you know, again, looking back at motor insurance, so ADAS, so advanced driver assistance systems, have over the last few years proliferated, and they're having a material impact on how often accidents occur, you know, how severe those accidents are when they happen. But traditional insurance still has a traditional view of how to price. It's, you know, how old you are, where you live, what job you might have, etc. But actually, understanding of the capabilities of the vehicle is crucial as well. So it's building bridges between the insurers and their understanding of those underlying risk assets can have a huge impact. So again, SwissRe has a solution on that front to give insurers better understanding of the risk that is presented by particular vehicles, and how they perform now with these new technologies. And that can, we think back to the customer then, what does the customer want? Well, a cheaper price or a fairer price on their insurance. If they've gone out and spent thousands of pounds buying the optional extra, which is a safety pack that has emergency brake-in and all these different assistance systems, well, they want to be and should expect to be rewarded for taking those options and paying extra for them. But as it stands today, insurers, what they lack and struggle with is that insight or understanding of what those technologies are capable of. And that that isn't sort of limited to motor insurance. You can think of you think of home insurance, and there's technologies out there now which can mitigate the effects of an escape of water or something. There are devices that monitor water flow into a property or can detect leaks. That in turn can be used by insurers to either intervene and kind of speak with the customer and see what's happening in their property, or just alert the customer so that they take action. So an event is far reduced versus what it could have been before. So like I said, it's that building that bridge between what technology is out there in the market and bringing that to light for insurers and helping them help customers mitigate risk.
I think that's really important. User experience can often be interpreted as making sure the customer has a seamless digital interaction when they interact with brands. And I think that, Gareth, your point is that it's much broader than that, and there's so much technology that can be used to help in other ways that perhaps the customer doesn't see, but will get the benefits from. So that's a common theme today. I'm glad that's come out. I think it's time for us to make some predictions. Everyone loves this bit. Let's hear them. What do you think will happen over the next decade? You've talked about the previous decades. What are your big predictions for insurance and smart insurance in the next 10 years? I think we know yours, Nigel, but we're going to start with you, and let's see.
Okay, I'll be pretty quick. I think probably the obvious ones. These are not necessarily the massive ones, but I certainly see on-demand embedded insurance continuing to uptick. I'm not sure I think in the next 10 years, I'm not sure they're really going to be mainstream, but they will absolutely continue to improve. More use of devices, obviously, but I think increasingly they need to be embedded devices rather than aftermarkets, which I think are really sort of inconvenient things. So having a black box fitted or sending out a device to your home that you have to clip onto a pipe or something, they're pretty painful and inconvenient to consumers, and convenience tolerance or inconvenience tolerance is waning with consumers, rightly so. Obviously, the practical use of AI is going to be continue to grow in claims and fraud detection and in underwriting as well, and the ongoing use of data analytics, particularly auto ML. I think the bigger areas are likely to be around data transportation. So the secure use of perhaps blockchain for better transformation of what I would maybe phrase open risk information, the equivalent of open banking in a kind of way. So the ability to transfer risk information, which will make it far more convenient for customers, obviously with their very, very secure, using something like blockchain or some kind of crypto solution. That's going to be challenging, but I can see that being a huge area. And the one that I'm going to say, Steve, so I'm going to have to say it now, is the end of the call center in its mainstream manner, because I see consumer needs now have massively moved to self-service, automation, high levels of access and convenience 24/7 through digital channels. So that is the way it's going to go. The end of the call center and the end of the admin center as we know and love or hate it.
And there's the headline. Is it the end of the call center, Gareth? Are we still going to need the human touch, and what other trends do you see on the horizon?
I think there will always be a need for a course, and I think reducing the kind of extent to which it's needed is probably likely to happen. But particularly if you think of motor claims where there's been injuries and things like that, there's always a need for a human touch as such, to bring that empathy, bring that kind of understanding in the what is a very stressful point in anybody's life to make a motor claim. Point of an accident, but in a more broader term, and I think again focusing on motor insurance, so certainly the SwissRe view is the future is automated, connected, electric, and shared, and a lot of those elements really do come together. I think one of the points that was raised earlier as well about is this requirement for flexible insurance. So apologies for not being at the start, but if I think of what the last decade, or certainly when the aggregators really grew in the UK, what it did is commoditize insurance. Everybody's product is basically the same, and you're solely competing on price. But what technology will allow for is much more flexible types of insurance, or tailored insurance specific to customer needs, whether that's because people are driving shared vehicles, whether it's because they're a delivery driver on the weekend and they need a sort of commercial cover for a short period, but private cover for else in the week. That could well be. What is it facilitated by? Well, it's facilitated by technology, things like smartphone-enabled telematics. What that has done is dramatically reduce the overheads that are required. There's not only a frictional cost for a customer in needing to make time in the diary for an engineer to come out and fit a black box or the like. It also reduces the cost. All it is the setup costs and the data transmission costs for telematics now, because the hardware itself is embedded within some smartphone. And in the future, what we will see is a lot more connected vehicles. So the hardware again is installed when the car was built in the first place. So insurers are not bearing that overhead cost. So as you get access to that, and it being much richer data as well, so rather than just being where are they driving, how fast are they driving, you'll have much more contextual data around the vehicle as well. So what that does is allow for these more flexible and tailored products to people's needs, and being able to deliver. I'm always hesitant to say cheaper prices. It's all about fairer prices, and that's what I think customers want and understand is, everything can't be made cheaper all the time, but what it is fair and representative of what risk you pose as an individual.
Yeah, it's great, like automated, connected, electric, and shared, and it sounds like we should add personalized or flexible to that too. Great list there. Let's end with you, Mohammed. Your thoughts, make sense of it all for us.
So I think all the insurers just heard Gareth talk about cheaper reinsurance rates there. Just like to point that out. I'm joking. I think two things, right? So the first, like we've talked about, is technology enabling us to genuinely think about risk mitigation rather than just an insurance payout. So how do we stop the accident how do we use technology to stop the accident from happening in the first place? Gareth mentioned ADAS systems. As we move to fully electric, actually cars will break down less, right? Because like an electric car's motor is much, much simpler than an internal combustion engine. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing, and this is rather than a prediction as an actuary, it's more a picture I'd like to paint, is what I would call live real-time insurance. So why can't we have it that if I'm going to go on the A40 and then turn onto the M1, I'm not sure if that makes sense. Geography was never my strong suit. But that actually you get insurance by the road that you're traveling on, or insurance by the type of day that you're traveling on, and that your car speaks to you and tells you, actually, we've searched the cheapest rates and this is going to be the cheapest rate for you. I get that all my actuarial colleagues will then be having a complete fit about how they do the pricing for that. But in a similar way on commercial lines insurance as a business, Gareth talked about it before, if it detects a leak in the waterworks, actually, instead of talking about the insurance claim, you suddenly get a ping and it shuts off your water, and then the calendar comes up and it says, when do you want the engineer to visit? And when the engineer visits, by the way, they'll also bring a cleaning crew and then tidy everything up. That, I think, genuinely is the future of insurance for all of us. That's what technology can enable. It stops the claim occurring or minimizes the claim event.
That's a really powerful thought to end on. So I think we will call it there and say thank you to everyone for joining us. Huge thanks to our panel for their contributions, and just to wish you all a great rest of the week and enjoy Wales Tech Week. So take care for now. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Rewatch all of our sessions online. Thank you to our partners.